Hey, you guys, as I promised some of you, give an update on our move. And the plan was to break the trip up into like 2 nights or 3 nights.
2 nights. Our first stop leaving California or leaving the Inland Empire was Bishop. And then we would spend a night in Bishop. And then after Bishop, we would go to Winnemucca, Nevada, and then on to Idaho. So Sunday we left for Bishop. And
Now, this is a little testimony of how God speaks to us through the city of Bishop. So I'm going to go back to an earlier trip. The first time we went to Bishop, it was May.
It was May, Memorial Day particularly.
1984.
So 40 years ago.
40 years ago. We were newly married. And my brother Richard, he passed away a couple of years ago, but back then he loaned us his truck and his camping equipment.
Yep.
And we were going to go to Bishop for Memorial Day. I heard it was really great place and up in Northern California. And we get to Bishop, and it happens to be their annual Mule Days, which is a big parade, rodeos. The whole city is
It's a huge event for Bishop.
in Bishop, and we wanted to camp in Bishop.
And we stopped at this what do you call them? Something post, like those, like a store where they sell things, like a grocery store.
Yes.
But they don't call them that in the West. They call them like something post or whatever.
Where's the campsite? We asked them.
Yeah.
And he was like, "You are not going to find any camping in Bishop. It's our Mule Days."
They said
And
everything was
everything's full. You're going to have to go to the next city. That Bishop's in the middle of stinking nowhere. Where's the nearest?
No, there was nothing. They said you're going to have to go back to the town behind you, which was probably, and it was a tiny little town too. It was called Lone Pine or something like that.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh my gosh. And he just basically gave us this, there's no way you're going to find
We
any
went
campsite.
somewhere else and asked again, like, "Hey, where's the campsite?" Like, in the same story, like, you're not going to camp anywhere in Bishop. And so we start driving. It's nighttime. We're getting grumpy.
Oh, wait, so tell them how. So Alfred, my amazing husband, he always is like, no, I'm going to figure this out. And I'm getting grumpy because it's late. I'm hungry. And he said, we're just going to look for the light. And when we see the light, we're going to go toward it. And we're just going to say, hey, would you mind if we just we'll pay you to.
We're going to drive into a campsite and ask somebody if we can squeeze in somewhere.
He was totally willing to do that.
I was willing
"You're
to
crazy."
do that. And so we drive at nighttime and we find a sign.
It's very, very late. It's like after 11 by this time.
It says Horton Creek Campground. We drive in, right?
Well, we were driving around for a long time because it was 11, but by the time we got to that campsite, it was 2 hours later. It took us 2 hours because we would follow a light and then it would take us to nowhere. And so we had to turn around and we just kept driving. And then we were just driving on this road and all of a sudden we saw that sign that you just said.
Horton Creek Campground.
Yeah.
We went in there and I saw a space. It's like, I don't even see any other campers. We camped. And when morning came, it was just the most beautiful spot. I thought I heard the wind. It was a creek. We're right by a creek. And it was just a great place.
Nobody was there. There was like one other camper there, and then that next day they left. So we were literally like the only people in this campground. Now, why wasn't anybody in this campground? Because there was no hookups. There was literally
no hookups. I guess everybody wants hookups. Like, no,
but we didn't care. We were tent camping.
We didn't
anyway.
care. We were tent camping. We had everything we needed. We're young. We're ready to rough it. Anyways, so
we were so happy.
There's two messages. Yeah, we were really happy.
Yeah.
There's two messages in this. One is, don't believe Satan's messages of false despair.
But before you get into that, let's talk about what happened to us this trip. Because this trip was very interesting because here we are, 40 years later, we get to Bishop and something happened.
We started out. Was it Sunday morning?
Well, we spent the night, and we were
in
going
Bishop.
to leave. We were going to leave Monday. We were on our way. We were like 10, 15 minutes outside of Bishop.
Everything's going good. We're 10 minutes outside into the middle of wilderness,
Yep.
deserty area. And somebody pulls up next to me and says, "Hey, so I pull over, see what's going on. And I have a tandem axle trailer that I'm towing. She's towing a trailer, pulling the motorcycle. I'm towing a 14-foot trailer that used to be for my sound company.
I was ahead of him, so I didn't.
She's in front, and I called her. I'm pulling over, and my axle is smoking. It's metal on metal. The bearings of my rear axle on the trailer were gone, and it was just smoke coming out of that axle. And
So we turned around.
we
said
turned
we have
around.
to go back to
10
Bishop.
minutes back into town, smoking axle, and
And we went to the very first mechanic, and the very first mechanic said,
"There's you need a new axle. You can't just pack bearings into that thing, though, because it's the end of the axle that ground down and it's smoking."
and he said, "We don't do that."
And we don't do that. Nobody in town does that. And the owner of the company, this woman, she says, like, every mechanic, everybody in town that works to do anything with cars is 2 weeks backed up. It's just, you're not going to find anybody to do it.
But then we went to that one place, and he told us we could park in the Big 5 parking lot because we went to another mechanic.
Another mechanic, same
He told
thing.
us the same exact thing.
Same
He said,
thing.
"Well, you can go over into this parking lot
We
and
can park into the parking lot of the Big 5.
because there was an empty, a vacant.
Yeah,
vacant
big parking lot, and I'm
So we're like,
calling.
what? Yeah.
I'm calling around.
Nobody. So we're just like, what are we gonna do?
So we're considering calling a towing service
So we're gonna get
that'll tow my whole trailer to the nearest sizable city where maybe we can get help.
We're looking it up,
And he's telling like, okay, yeah, that'll be about $1,500 to $2,000.
because the nearest big city that could help us was Carson City, Nevada, which was 200 miles away. There was nothing. We're literally in the middle of nowhere. Nobody can help us. We are like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do?
We've got that 14-foot trailer is full of our belongings. She's pulling the motorcycle.
So we thought, okay, well, fine, we'll have to have it towed, and we'll just get it done like that. But he called the tow company, and he said,
So I call a tow company, and he's the one that gave me the price, these outrageous prices.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, but you know what? You're going to get to Reno, and you're going to be in the same boat. Nobody's going to have this axle there. So you're going to spend all this money for me to tow you, and you're still going to
be in the same boat of sitting and waiting.
And it's going to be like, who knows how long out till somebody can get this part ordered. And he says, try.
So he said,
try this tire place. There's a wheel service in town, and see if maybe they can help you or have other
and he
resources.
said, but they're probably at least a week out.
They're probably a week out.
So-
They're not going to have any parts, but maybe they'll know somebody. Maybe they can help
totally
you.
probably not, but you can try, and he can get the part, and at least you won't be paying all the money for the towing. So then we thought, okay, well, we'll leave it there. Our thought was we'll leave it there and we'll just keep going, and we'll have to come back and get it.
Yeah.
So that was our plan, and we drove it over there.
We went over there, and I pull in, and hey, what's up? A bunch of Mexicans, wonderful guys. They were right. He was looking at it right away. He says, pull in right here. I'll look at it. And he's looking at it, and I'm telling him this, I know I'm going to need a new axle. And he's like, maybe, I think there's something I could. Anyways, this dude was the maestro of wheel service. He looked at it, and he just started, he said, maybe tomorrow, if we're lucky today, I can think of something. Anyways.
He said tomorrow at noon, the latest.
Tomorrow at noon, the latest. But he had it up on a jack. He's taking it apart.
Away.
His guys are helping him, and he's taking a grinder to it, and he
said, I can do this.
He says, I can do this. I don't know if he invented a part or something, but he ground it down, cleaned it out, and later that day we were rolling. The dude
he called at about 2:00, and he said, yeah, your trailer will be ready at 4. We're just like, what?
Trailer ready at 4.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm I'm a bonehead. I'd never serviced this trailer. I didn't know.
Yeah.
You
kind of
gotta
our
you
fault.
gotta re-grease these axle things, you know. I'm smart with tools and sometimes in some places, but I'm no mechanic. And he told me like, no, every year you
gotta
you
service
gotta
this.
grease these axles. You've got to service them. We had him do all 4 of them, grease them.
And gave us new tires.
He didn't give us.
We didn't pay.
We
paid.
bought new tires off of him. He gave us a great deal.
Amazing deal.
On more heavy duty tires. He serviced all 4, and we were up and running.
Okay, so yeah, so let's go back to 1984. So we got the campsite. It was like totally a godsend. And the next day we decided to go. We decided to go into town because we heard it was Mule Days. We're like, oh, let's go check it out. And we were like about to leave. And what happened?
Mule days?
We're going back to 1984 for a second because we got to mention the part about the wind kicked up.
Oh, we were going to go into town. That's testimony 2. So
Oh, okay.
testimony 1, God is teaching us
Okay.
um,
Yeah. Good.
about false despair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody in that town's telling us, no way, you're
Yep.
stuck in this town.
Yep.
Your trailer's messed up.
Yep.
And God came through, and we're rolling the same day. Message number 2 from God that God gave us through the city of Bishop is like, be ready, for goodness sakes. Okay, so 1984, we're ready to go into town, have a good time. Just before we did that, we're at Horton Creek, 1984. The wind kicks up and just rips everything in our campsite apart. We were going to roll into town without cleaning up, without buttoning down, without thief-proofing stuff, without putting stuff away. And like the Holy Spirit, God sends a wind and it just messes up. So we had to clean up. We had to get ready. And we did that before we went into town. Now here we are,
40 years later.
40 years later. I'm thinking I can just willy-nilly go up north, and my tires,
He hasn't serviced his trailer.
I haven't
in
served my tires. I
years.
didn't grease the axles. The tires had low mileage, but I haven't used my personal sound company with the trailer for a really long time. This is the big rig that the sound that can do stadiums. I haven't used it in years. I've been doing smaller gigs with my boss's equipment, and I didn't realize that even though the tires were low mileage, they can't just sit in your driveway for a couple of years without rolling. You've got to get new tires if you haven't rolled them. My tires, I'd never covered them up. They've been sitting in the sun on this trailer. Never greased the axles. So God is like, you can't just roll without preparing. You've got to prepare for this long trips. And so message number 2 is like, be prepared. And so God used Bishop for that message too. Is that you're going to go somewhere? Be prepared. I mean, I've been prepared prayerfully, but man, you got to get your gear in order, you know? So it's just a little story how God used the city of Bishop to say, don't believe false messages of despair.
Yep.
And wherever you're going to go, be prepared.
And God's grace to take care of us, because it could have been so much worse. In 1984, we could have come back to our campsite and everything would have been gone because the wind blew it away. In 2024, we could have he could have had a blowout and lost his axle and caused an accident.
Man, we were in deserty areas for hours, middle
you
of
guys,
nowhere.
Nothing.
The Lord spared us from
Yeah.
being like several hours from in either direction from some
Yeah.
place
Yeah.
in need of an axle
Yeah.
with this 14-foot trailer. And so
Yeah.
God is good.
So good, you guys. I
Yes.
hope that encourages you just to know, like, we just know that God has been speaking to me, just like, I've got this. God's been telling me that for weeks. Like, I've got this. And just trusting that he does, and just seeing his hand in protecting us. That's been really, really amazing. And it's just really interesting how Bishop has just literally, God used Bishop to teach us the same lesson 40 years later.
So here we are, Napa, Idaho, the city we will be calling our home. We're already hit the ground running and looked at a bunch of houses today, and we'll give you an update on all that soon.
Soon.
Love you. Bye.